I'm just warming up my voice. Okay, so hello there, people who managed to stumble on this video. Um, this is I decided to put all my thoughts, my reactions, my uh, all my ramblings about the God of War franchise, the Greek saga more specifically. So a brief story. I I am a Norse saga fan of God of War. I discovered it just last year. My friend recommended it to me, and I fell in love with the Norse saga. I fell in love with Kratos, Atreus, and the whole emotional experience was special to me and helped me through tough times. And after I experienced the Norse saga, I realized that it's just not enough. I had to go back. I had to experience the whole franchise. So I I looked for a dusty PS3, got it repaired. I had to buy a controller. I had to look at the internet for copies of the old games. I spent so much money just to play the Greek saga because they just won't sell it to me directly in the PS5. And I hope people don't suffer as much as I did, but I don't think Sony likes to sell the old games. They want to sell the remake, and I don't. I won't discuss my thoughts on the remake here in this review. Also, while reviewing, I'm going to pretend that the Norse saga does not exist, so I will not be comparing the writing, the gameplay, development, or anything. I'm gonna pretend it doesn't exist. And some disclaimers. Before I proceed, I played in normal mode and once, and I saw this come up so many times when I'm discussing with people on Discord or Reddit. When I say my impression on the game, especially on terms of difficulty and mechanics, there's a tendency that people say that, have you tried it in hard mode or Titan mode or that? It's like your opinion on normal mode is invalid to them because you found it easy, but that's not how things go, and I have to explain why I played it in normal because I think it is the base vanilla version. It's the version that is most play tested and averaged into and sold into the common consumer. If I go to a restaurant and I order some ramen and I made my first impression on that ramen, you don't get to tell me that you should try the most spicy flavor, then judge it. So you can see, I'm not saying the hard mode or challenging modes are better or worse. I'm just saying that to be able to make this comparison from one game to another, I think I had to play normal. I'm also not an action gamer. I haven't played Devil May Cry. I think it's the franchise compared the most to God of War. I haven't played that. And so I am reviewing this from a perspective of someone who is totally new on this kind of genre. My review will be generally two big parts. Uh, the first big part is my general ranking of games. I made a tier list with that. My general ranking on the Greek games minus Betrayal. People like to mention Betrayal. I have no means to play it, and even though I don't think it is relevant in this review. So it's self-explanatory. I think my top criteria is the overall gameplay, which of course is the basic, the most important part of since this is a game, the base combat, the environmental level design, the puzzles, the bosses and the enemy design and variety. Pretty self-explanatory. Next is the art direction. So it involves how is the stage designed, how do they incorporate the Greek elements, the cinematic elements, the cutscenes, artistic choices like the differences in art style, lighting, maybe acting, and other many things. It comes next to the gameplay, but in my head it's such a smaller contribution to it has a smaller contribution to my overall review. Then of course the story writing and lore, which is the main reason I even play these games. See, I didn't play God of War Greek Saga because I want to make a 300 hit combo with the blades. I played it for the story writing and lore. So I think I have to be honest with that. But even though I played it for the story and lore, I do appreciate these things. And I do respect the studio Santa Monica who made this franchise. I respect its legacy, and it is such an enlightening and interesting experience to me to dive back and experience all these games. So let us start. Oh, before I start with the games, part two is where I discuss the story and writing. I made a separate tier list for it because my opinions there will be very long and very, you know, very in depth. So for the first ranking, I will review it in an order similar to its release because I think that's an important factor in determining if whether the game is ahead of its time or something that's a bit dated. I do admit I haven't played other action games, but I do play a lot of games during the late 2000s and 2010s era. So God of War 1. No ads this way. Okay. It's the way I will do this review, I will first praise it, then I will say my criticism on many things, but again, since it's my overall ranking, I'm going to mention lore a way less than my lore section. So God of War 1 is the baseline game of this franchise, and every other game after it will be compared to God of War 1. I do think that coming from the Norse games, I was pleasantly surprised to learn that it has a very low skill floor. And when I mention low skill floor, it means that even with the basic buttons, basic understanding of the combat, you can do a lot of things without difficulty. You can execute combos, freestyle, and take down shields and all of that. When I mentioned that this game has a low skill floor, I don't mean it as a negative thing. Some people get defensive over it because uh, they want God of War to be a high skill game, especially the Greek saga. And I don't agree that being a high skill floor game makes it a bit better. Actually, the fact that this is low skill floor and high ceiling means you could enjoy the game as a total noob, but at the same time achieve so many things when you grow in skill. You can manage to do a lot of challenges in other, you can handicap yourself. You don't want upgrades or you don't want magic. I think that's a good game design. So for other comments, the magic is cheap, and I think it's the strongest magic of all the Greek games. It's really, especially the first Magica, the Poseidon one. It's a it's like get out of jail card, and for again, it has a I could praise it for amazing cinematography. I think the one of the biggest distinction of the Greek era from the Norse era is the camera work, and I haven't had much experience with fixed camera angles, but I really like how they use it here. I can definitely see why it was fixed. I understood the purpose behind it, and there's so many moments in the game where um, the fixed camera and the way they directed it enhanced the whole experience. So as early as now, I'll praise it. There's a part of the game where you first met Ares in, I think, in Athens when you were called by when you were called in Athens. Oh no, I hate ads. I had to I had to do this incognito because someone else is using my YouTube Premium now. I don't want them to see my history being God of War. Anyway, there's a part, especially in Athens, where Ares just emerges from the from between two cliffs. Can you describe it like that? And then you see how massive Ares is. While his armies and Athens army are waging war behind him. It's such a good storytelling technique to see how much Kratos has to overcome just to win this battle. I think I can find it. Yeah, I think it's here. That's pretty good. Is it here? I think they cut it in this video. And I think my point was, um, oh, it's here. See that? There's something much earlier here when you're climbing the cliffs and you just see this massive army, people killing each other. It's such a cinematic moment. Okay, anyway, so for I also think that God of War 1 has the best story of all the Greek games. I will go in depth with that later, but I was surprised on the depth it has. I am familiar I I'm familiar with the criticisms in this franchise, and I do understand why people dismiss the Greek games. But if I'm going to showcase really good writing, character writing, thematic depth, I will give them God of War 1. For comments and criticisms and dislikes, of course, it's a platforming hell. This was some of the sections of God of War 1 was simply one of the worst gaming experiences I had in the last 10 years. I'm not kidding. The platforming, I think I played like 5 minutes to the store, and I kept falling down the log into the ocean. I'm supposed to be a super strong warrior of the gods, and I die falling into the sea. It's so it frustrated me as early as 5 to 10 minutes of the game, and there are some sections where I just want to sleep so bad. I just want to rest, but I can't because there's the saving of in this game, the save files. You have a save station. You cannot once you exit that stage, you lose your progress. And I had this very, you know, almost a spiritual experience when I'm questioning myself. Why am I torturing myself with this cheese grater rotating wheel in Hades? So you get that. And for more thorough criticism, the rage meter is almost useless in normal. You don't really need to use it actually. It takes too long to fill, and because I was reserving it for Ares so much, I even forgot that it existed. I defeated Ares without using it because I forgot. And there's only three bosses: the Hydra, the the metal giant minotaur, and of course Ares. I do think Ares is a spectacular boss, and it's such an emotional, climactic battle, and has some clever storytelling. But of course, I will go in depth with lore in maybe part two. I think it may be in a separate video, but I'll talk about it later. So, what's the verdict? For now, for now, I'm going to put God of War 1 in B as in baseline. So, it doesn't make it bad. It's just B because it's the very first experience. God of War 2. So, this is a theme song. To Telos Arichi. I think it's theme song. I was singing it earlier, but I'm a bit embarrassed because the neighbors might wake up when I sing it. So I don't know where to start with God of War 2. I think it is, yes, this is a great song. Look at this beautiful, beautiful scene. Very good opening scene, of course. And look at that, the war, the flaming arrows, this shiny boy right here, and it's such a strong opening. Of course, it calls back when Kratos jumped the last game, was jumping out of despair, but now he is jumping for destruction. Brr, so angry, just waging war on the world. And I think God of War 2 gave me that euphoric feeling when I shifted from Uncharted 1 into God of War 2. Like, took every feedback, every complaint, and just made almost everything better, in my opinion, in terms of combat and mechanics. For combat, I love the Golden Fleece so much. It's like half of it's like half of the reason I'm playing God of War 2, and it's so rewarding when you just deflect those attacks. And compared to God of War 1, the Rage Meter is so useful here. It's my clutch from so many battles when I'm about to die, about to lose. The Rage Meter is able to save me, and to be able to collect some yellow orbs. I think it's a good added mechanic. And the platforming is also much easier and less punishing, so you don't really die just because you fell off a beam. Sometimes you just fell off the first floor, and there's there moments where you fall to your death, but it's less punishing than the first game. And when they added Icarus wings, love it so much. It made things so much easier. Then um maybe because of the success of God of War 1, they have more budget for bosses, not just standard vanilla bosses. Like they could make cinematic bosses like this, and they even had some Greek heroes, and I think it's Perseus and Theseus. Those things, Greek references, and they're memorable because they have good variety in combat. Especially, I think it's one of the battle with the barbarian king is where he runs like a coward around. It's so annoying, but I appreciate the boss variety. And the magic is more balanced. I do think that some magic is too late, like the Atlas Quake, but overall magic is useful and not and there are more interesting combinations in magic here. For example, the Urail's head combines well with a barbarian hammer, and I love it. So magic is because the last game magic was cheap, but now the magic feels more like it's integrated in your game plan. And probably my best praise to this game, I think, the boss fight of the Sisters of Fate with Lachesis and Atropos, from the hallway fight where you had to strategize in segmenting your the crowd control of the mobs. Lachesis and Atropos is hands down my favorite boss fight in all games, even the Norse games. I said that I'm gonna pretend that the Norse games don't exist, but it's always my favorite boss fight in all the God of War franchise, because it forced me to apply everything I learned. Force you to be more observant, to uh, to be mobile, to learn the key in defeating the sisters. It's a puzzle boss fight, but it's bugged in my first run, because yes, you have to destroy the mirror, and once you destroy the mirror, the second sister will appear in another mirror, right? But in my first run through that stage, the sister totally disappeared. She never appeared again, and I was stuck. And it's just funny. And for criticism, some line sections take so long, but it's just a minor nitpick, nothing really major. My main issue with God of War 2 is the story is so shallow. I'm not gonna say story. I think the higher ups realize that the core audience of God of War wants it for the violence, for the aggression, the anger, and they just went on with a very fast-paced game where Kratos, um, it's there's barely any character, just plot, and the plot is very simple actually. I could summarize it in like three sentences and four sentences. The plot is so simple and spread for a few hours. I think God of War 2 is the longest Greek game. Not saying it's fun. I had so much fun. But the story is not something I will praise, and I will discuss this in a much more detailed way, in a deeper way when once I go to the lore section. I think that it lays a weak foundation for God of War 3. But it's so fun. I There are moments that are honestly so dumb, and but it's also cinematic. I think the QTE with Zeus, I had to the part where Kratos pretended to surrender. It's just he just says that, kill me, Zeus, because I surrender, and then Zeus fell for it. It's like both of them have two of them have low IQs. This is also what happened with Kratos. It's the start of his game where a voice tells him, "Oh my God, this is the moment." Oh my God. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay, but it's still awesome. This is the difference between God of War 2 and God of War 3. I will go to that later. I still can, laugh at these moments. So cheesy, so violent, just like WWE. And I hated this QTE part. I think it's harder than a lot of boss fights in the whole franchise. Yeah, because that's a skill issue for my part. Anyway, so stories, I don't like the story at all, but it's so fun, and let's dive. Okay, for the next entry, I'm gonna go with Chains of Olympus. Chains of Olympus. My standards for this is going to be different, knowing that it came from. I mean, it was developed for the PSP, and it shows. I think they recycled some concepts that they were not able to use. So they put it. I'll explain it later, but I fully understand why the mechanics have to be dumbed down, and doesn't it's not as complex as the mainline games. So for the Chains of Olympus, I think the thing that I love the most in this game, I like the Temple of Helios. I like the light theme. There's At the beginning of the game, Morpheus apparently kidnapped Helios, and then you have this very cinematic moment where everything went dark, and I love that. I love the I love the overall art direction of this game, where when you collect those light beams. I think this one. Yes, this one. Very cinematic. I like it. And when you go to Helios' temple, when you activate those light beams and do some puzzles with them, I really like the idea behind them. And I enjoyed the shield so much, and the Zeus gauntlet. Although it was too late, but the Light of Dawn projectile is so bad. Like, it's the worst projectile in the franchise. Takes so slow, and the damage is peanuts. I also think the easiest game in the franchise, like the most challenging part in Chains of Olympus, is the fact that I think they reduce some chest near end game so that you just feel depleted. But I forgot if it is this game or Ghost of Sparta, where whenever I die, I respawn with more health than I should be. And okay, I'm not complaining. And for mild criticism, I do feel that the story is two different ideas just mashed together. They're I feel that the first part of this game is a concept where Morpheus was the villain and Helios was gone. But then when you fall into Hades, suddenly the story became about Atlas and Persephone. Persephone, sorry. I it's not. I think it's Persephone, and that's why I feel it's so disjointed thematically, with Calliope's flute just like a connecting factor to lure Kratos deep into the underworld. And Persephone is probably the worst villain in the franchise in terms of execution, and she does contradicts God of War 1's lore, because God of War 1 says that you need to open Pandora's box to kill a god, but Kratos already killed Persephone, and I call her the worst villain because her name and her existence was introduced by very late in this game. So above the gods. So based on this video, she's introduced like around 70%, but this playthrough is also like not the whole thing. It felt like she was introduced in the last hour of the game, and then she had to say her motivation for 5 to 10 minutes. And I do I do know that this game is praised for the abandon your daughter, cutie. It's one of the most heartbreaking parts of the game, and does a very heavy lifting of the whole game in terms of story. But I do think that the mashed concept of Persephone and Morpheus kind of makes the whole thing, messy as a whole. So that's my thoughts on Chains of Olympus. And we're going to God of War 3. But before that, based on everything that I've said, I am gonna put it in C tier. Note that I when I put in C tier, it's more of its relative placement from God of War 2. I'm not saying that's bad or that I hated it, because I liked all these games. I enjoyed them all. I finished them all, and I challenged myself to adapt to the gameplay, to be able to appreciate them as games. So, God of War 3. So again, I'm going to start with a high praise of God of War 3. I think it's the game with the best art direction of all God of War games. The opening itself is so impressive to me. I had to watch it over and over because I loved it. I love the style of art, the 2D style, and the whole the way it summarized the whole journey of Kratos from start to finish. So cinematic. The music is good, and they went so hard on this game, and the all the apocalyptic and epic vibes in terms of music, the visuals when a god dies, just the seas just the seas rise up, there are pestilence, there are plague, the darkness reigns. It's such a visual feast, spectacular, and one of the most beautiful games I've ever seen in my whole life. So it got get that praise. For the combat, it is different from God of War 2, but I appreciate it because I think what they improved on this game, they gave you much more option in terms of versatility in magic, in attacks, and mobility. So this game gives you the ability to air dash and also dash. Yeah, so you can escape easily. You can position easily. So if you are a player who likes moving around the battlefield, repositioning, dancing around, this game is the best with it, and adds to the air dash adds to so much the quality of encounters. And again, they changed the gameplay, so it's something fresh and new compared to God of War 2. And I think it's, even though they added different, even though they tied magic to the weapon type, it's still a low skill for game, accessible. And for example, in the last game in God of War 2, when I want to do an aerial combo, I had to memorize the inputs to lift the opponent and do some air juggles. And here in God of War 3, I could just switch to the Nemean whip, press R1 and square. So it's much more simple to go aerial. And because because there's so much outplays, I find this game easier than God of War 2. And um, for the boss encounters here, of course, spectacular and creative. I think the highlight of the bosses for me is Cronus and Zeus. For Cronus, I think it's just a feat that the devs are able to implement, that boss battle where you fight something that is much much higher. So Chronos battle is a mix of, it's like a living environment. The environment of that stage is the boss itself. Something impressive and unique from other games, to be honest. And the Zeus fight is multi-phase, and the 2D part is surprising, and I had no way to cheese that part. It forces you to be a fighting game player. I do play fighting games, and that's why I love that part so much. And I think I could go all day praising the beautiful visuals, the spectacle of this game. There's a part where Kratos is, you know, wading in the dark, wading in the dark waters with the red streak on his back, and the place is filled with shadows and just an artistic and visually stimulating moment. But I have to go with the criticism now. For my criticism, some moments feel like just I think this is a bit minor, a minor nitpick. The Hermes fight was a bit disappointing to me because I thought it's gonna be a real boss battle, but it's just, a glorified cutscene. It's not even a real race because Hermes will wait for you. But you get it. I thought it was more of gameplay than a glorified cutscene, but that's a minor nitpick. But for my major complaint, the story is convoluted, and there are retcons that unnecessary and damages the whole franchise, the whole lore. I think the character writing is all over the place, with Kratos internally inconsistent. His writing is so all over the place. And in terms of story and character writing, unfortunately, I have to put God of War 3 as my least liked. Yes, story, character writing, bottom God of War 3 for me. I'm sorry. But I think it's just, when I was watching the behind the scenes feature of this game, there was a part where Mr. Stig Asmussen was his name. He's the director of 3. He's talking to the whole team, and then he said that, I think Kratos doesn't have a personal time. That's why we should add the scene where he's battling the fear that Zeus released. And you can see that, it was a late addition. That scene is mostly cinematic, very beautiful cinematic. But on a character and thematic level, it doesn't work. Doesn't work at all. You know, I will go in depth in that criticism when I go talk about the lore. But basically, this um I think God of War 3 would have been stronger if it just committed to one simple tone and theme like God of War 2, because God of War 2, you could just not take it that seriously and enjoy the violent ride. Well, God of War 3 wants to be taken so seriously, but it doesn't work for me. So, how do I rate it? Even though I dislike the story, do tell us Odyssey, do tell us Odyssey. Yeah, sorry, different theme song. But yep, I put it there because I recognize its achievements as a game. even though I don't like the story. Anyway, so Ghost of Sparta. So Ghost of Sparta. When I first tried Ghost of Sparta, I think I told myself, it's just gonna be Chains. Like Chains is it's a PSP game. It doesn't have to have highest standards. It's low budget. But then I'm actually impressed that they improved from Chains of Olympus. Ghost feels more, how do you say it? It's more challenging. The enemies have some fresh takes in it. I think the sirens are different compared to the other sirens in the franchise. They had the shield mechanic of Terra Fire to bring down the shield. So I think it's something new. At first it was hard to adapt, but I appreciate it as time passed on. And I nerded out on the Terran eruption because I'm such a fan of ancient civilizations, and I obsess over the way they ended. The Minoan civilization is said to have ended or declined because of the Thera eruption. It's a massive volcanic eruption on Santorini, and I will geek out. I will nerd out on this. The way they put it in the game, I love it so much, because some people, some pop culture people say that, what if the Thera eruption is the source of the Atlantean myth? And you can see the creators use that here, in God of War, and I appreciate that. I love it. So um, back to the gameplay. While I do appreciate the change on taking out shield, I think the Borealis spell is the most useless magic ever. Like, I just stood there and did the rotating action, and then before I know it, the magic bar is gone, and barely nothing happened to the opponents. I hated it so much. I never used it again after that. I leveled it, I think, because there were excess orbs, but I still don't like it. And it's an improvement from Chains of Olympus because I feel it's more cohesive, especially that it's a character driven storyline. I think it's a second most character focused game in the Greek franchise, second to God of War 1. I do think the Chains of Olympus do have some strong character moments, especially, I forgot to praise it earlier, but the way Kratos pleaded to Atlas, saying that this is all I had left. It was an emotional moment. So, in retrospective, I will praise Chains on that. But I will go. Yeah, we're not talking much about the lore. We're not taking lore as one of the biggest factors in my current ranking. Sadly, that even though that it was an interesting character-driven storyline, the finale is so rushed. I think that Thanatos is most second worst main villain in the franchise, or equal to Persephone. He's such an easy boss fight. Like, it's not. He's even easier than some of the mob bosses, like the Cerberus or Sirens and the Gorgons. So easy. It's so boring. And then, of course, the whole game builds on Demas, but then you you fight him in 5 minutes. Then you became like best friend brothers again in 5 minutes, and he just died in another after 5 minutes again. It's just so rushed and satisfying. So, in that aspect, I'm going to rank Ghost of Sparta. I'd like to put it above Chains, but for now, they will be in the same category. And okay, I'll think about it more later. Ascension. I'm almost done. Oh my gosh. Ascension. Chippy. Ascension. Where do I start? The thing is that I played Ascension after God of War 2. I'm reviewing it in release order, but I think it's best. It was best for me that I played Ascension before God of War 3, because it kind of makes things better in that way. Because if I play Ascension after God of War 3, I could just imagine, It's like going from hot water or cold water. It's so different, and your muscle memory is so screwed up. And uh, if we go for, of course, the positive first in Ascension, I'm aware that Ascension is the most disliked Greek game until Sons of Sparta that ruined it. But gonna, I mean, I understand. It was not highly regarded that the franchise kind of died after that before they rebooted with soft reboot with God of War 2018. So first, I will praise again. It's a beautiful game. I'm surprised that they could make something like that for the PS3. It looks when I played God of War 3, it was the remastered version. But this one, Ascension, is not remastered, but it still looks good for the PS3. I was so surprised. And the finale, especially, when there was a sea, there was a fight in the ocean, and the whole theme was ships and islands of Greece, the Aegean Sea. I really like that setting. I like the I think it has spectacular boss fights, cinematic moments. It has horrifying parts, body horror of the I think Hecatonchires, was it? The big monster they made into a jail. Personally, I really don't like insect aesthetics. I don't like insect designs, but overall, this game is visually beautiful. Has interesting settings like the moment of Kira. They have like this the city the village of Kiran or Kira, and you have this large snake, the volcano with the oracle high on steam, and she's seeing visions and all. And for that, I think I commend that this game came after God of War 3, so they must um I think it's such a challenge for them to follow up that game, but they still manage to they move away from Grand Olympus and showcase the some of the more natural parts of Greece, like the sea, the coast, and um sort of mountainous mountains in the sort of snowy mountains, sorry, snowy mountains. But I'm sorry, I have to go to the criticism. It's the most frustrating God of War game to play in terms of combat. And I do think it's artificially difficult because they restricted the rage meter. So previously you can build the rage meter, you can reserve it, you just activate it when you want to. But here they make you lose rage meter when you dodge, or you just stop attacking for a while. So um and it also locks some movements behind this rage meter. So to be able to utilize your move set, you have to have your rage up. And these moves used to be something you could just access with one press of a button, but now they locked it behind rage. And it's such a contradicting design because the game doesn't want you to block or dodge. It wants you to keep on attacking. But when you got hit once, your whole rage meter is gone. It punishes you for being aggressive, but it also wants you to be aggressive. It's like it wants you to parry, yes, but that comes that makes the game very um it wants to dictate the style of playing. I myself my style in playing is not very aggressive. I tend to be a in fighting games. We call that okizeme. So I tend to set up things. So there sometimes I don't attack. I just reposition. I cast a zoning spell, and from that setup, I execute one long combo. That's my style in most games. In God of War, it wants you to be aggressive, but other God of War games still gave me a lot of flexibility to execute the style that I prefer. But Ascension, not. It wants you to play a specific kind. And I don't agree saying that it's skill based or only it rewards skilled players. No, it rewards skilled players who has a specific style that fits Ascension. It doesn't want you to play in another way. I do think most of the game was easy, but then there are parts where there's a difficulty spike. And I think it's the boss with the Spartans. That was very difficult at first until I found out I could spam one of the Hades special attacks, the slash one. Trial of Archimedes. I don't know how to pronounce it. I think it's my most hated section of all Greek games at all, ever, or maybe even the whole God of War franchise. I hate the part where there's a lot of sirens in Gorgons because that it's not well designed. First, the stage is a box, so there's nothing but you and the opponents. You have no other means of partition or zoning, and both the sirens and the gorgons are long range or mid range attackers. And when you kill them, they bleed blue orbs. So blue orbs for magic. But none of your magic actually works properly with them except fire. Most of your magic are too short range to reach these enemies. And when your magic does connect, you can't use your magic as a combo starter or as a zoning skill because the magic is cast while you are stationary. You cannot move while casting them. It's such a poorly designed stage that highlights the flaws of the combat of Ascension. And for the story, I do think it's unnecessary. Unnecessary story in a grander scheme of things. I did read a lot of praises saying that it humanizes Kratos, so it wants to remind people that Kratos was once human too. He's capable of kindness. And I think that is neither a compliment or a bad thing because I think that you could showcase his humanity in plot relevant ways. I mean, you don't need the story of Ascension to build up his humanity as a character. A lot of it was already hard carried by God of War 1, and maybe I think it's part of their overall conflict and vision in for the whole franchise. I mentioned it when I reviewed God of War 3, where suddenly near the end, Stig says, we should have a personal moment with Kratos to remind the audience he's still, a person who need to have an internal struggle. I think the whole franchise has that kind of um, um, clashes of vision in terms of what they want with Kratos' character. But overall, this is my review on the gameplay, the design, the puzzles. I think I cannot really comment on puzzles on a case by case basis. One thing I could say about Ascension, I really like the clone and the time freeze magic in combat. I think they give us a quality of life, crowd control and combat mechanic for what else? Okay, I think pretty much that's the gist of my review. Maybe if I forget something very important, I will mention it in a lore review. I'm sorry. Oh, this is hard. I think God of War 1 is hard carried by the good writing, but for the other games, I think in terms of playing, um, kind of like Ghost of Sparta a little bit more than God of War 1. but I think the ending was, weak. So I think I gonna put it here. Yes, that's my ranking. And maybe if anyone is still listening by this part, this is my opinion, of course. One playthrough, normal playthrough from a Norse fan. That's it. None of these games are bad. I don't hate any of these games, but I have to do this and ramble about what I liked and disliked and their relative rankings from one another. For the difficulty tier, God of War 2 is the most difficult God of War game of all, I think. And God of War 1, if we just talk about combat, it's pretty easy. Very easy. I almost never died. I don't remember dying in combat for the first 5 hours, I think. And if I ever died, I think I died once because I didn't know that the Gorgon could make me a stone at first, so I died. And but after that, I don't remember dying much except falling to the lava or to the ocean. God of War 3. God of War 3, it's actually easier in a sense that there's so much tools to use, and I am able to cheese my way out of sticky situations way more than the other Greek games, because they gave me an option to do so. Again, this is not a bad thing. Some fans are obsessed with the idea that God of War is a high skill floor, or that if high skill floor game that noobs cannot mash, noobs cannot just freestyle. And they also get defensive um, when you mention that you manage to get past a few levels just by basic combos. I think it's a good game design that a game is able to be simple and also to be complex when you want it to be. It's not a bad thing, and we should not gatekeep the franchise in such a way that only real players can able to appreciate it. But for Chains of Olympus, I think it's the easiest. Yes, it's the easiest. Ghost of Sparta, I think it's yeah, I think it's also chill. When Thanatos is easier than Persephone, I think, but his daughter is harder than Thanatos. Thanatos' daughter was a harder boss fight than the father. Um, but the encounters with some of the enemies in Ghost of Sparta is harder than the enemies in Chains of Olympus. Ascension, gotta put it here just because the trial of Archimedes drove me crazy, but I think it's imbalanced. Some parts are easy, then some parts just spikes hard. God of War 2018 here. I'm gonna put it in B. I think it's because it's my first God of War game. It's the base. It's different from the Greek saga, but basic. I'm gonna put Ragnarok up here. Ragnarok, it's more challenging than God of War 2018, but it's still not as I still didn't, die as much as I did, and this the first two. I just this might be blasphemous from some people. I'm gonna put it over God of War 3. God of War 3, I think I die. I think Zeus is harder than Odin, way more harder than Odin. Zeus is harder than Odin, but for there are some bosses in Ragnarok where I find it harder than God of War 3 bosses. I think it's Nidhogg, Garm, and Heimdall, personally. But they're still not that hard. But hypothetically, if Valhalla is here, Ragnarok, Valhalla is way up here. Valhalla is way harder than these games. Sons of Sparta, well, you would be surprised. I'm gonna put it in A tier in difficulty because some bosses in Sons of Sparta are honestly very hard. And you really need to, die over and over before you can get their patterns. So these are my opinions for the easiest and the hardest, or the easiest and the hardest games in the franchise. normal difficulty, casual fan like me who are not into that complicated mechanics. For overall ranking, this is my God of War 2 is my favorite in terms of fun, but in terms of story, it's God of War 1. And my most disliked story is God of War 3. I have to be clear with that. For the next ranking for lore, some other time. So if anyone listened this far, thank you. And I'm okay with any comments or reaction. But remember, I'm just a casual player. I'm not a professional reviewer or anything. And I just rambled just so I can let out my feelings, my reaction, my thoughts, and overall impression before I move on to new things. You know, 15 years ago or something, there's when I was gifted a PSP, portable PlayStation. There's a I'm entitled to a free game in the store, and the owner asked me, should I give you a Patapon game or a God of War Ghost of Sparta game? I was a teenager then. I said, I'm gonna pick the Patapon game, and I don't regret it. I don't regret it. I don't regret missing God of War by more than 10 years, almost 15 years. I don't regret that I discovered this franchise much later in 2025 as an adult, much older adult. Because if you give me God of War back in my younger teenager days, I wouldn't have liked it at all. It's not made for me, and I'm not going to elaborate that much, but I would have rejected it for what it was, for um, the way it sells itself. But now I'm much older. I could look back in the 2000s era and have a different outlook. It's like it's essentially retro gaming in a sense. It's still pretty recent in terms of memory, but I can transport myself into this era where things were different, sensibilities were different. The market was geared towards young men, and God of War is a product of that era, and I understand that. I totally respect the legacy that it left. And now God of War has changed because it has different vision, different goals, different market. And I appreciate that contrast from this era and the Norse era. And I like that I am able to discover this at this age, binge all of the games. No more waiting, no more, speculating for 5 years what will happen or if Kratos is still alive. I did miss the overjoyed reaction in E3 when, it's revealed that he was in the Norse lands. I did miss that, but overall, I'm happy. I'm happy I found this game in 2025, and it's such a cool ride, amazing ride, interesting ride, you call it. I will proceed with the lore review in my next video to anyone who is still interested. And thank you for listening.